Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to another webinar from the IIBA Ireland chapter. My name is João. That hasn't changed since last time. And today we're very grateful to have with us David Verbanek. I hope I said it right. And the topic of today's webinar is the 4 habits for effective business analysis. And let me explain to you the structure of the webinar today. So, as usual, I will be a couple of minutes for myself to introduce the speaker. Then David will be kind enough to do the presentation, and then at the end of the day, at the end of the session, we will have some time for some questions and answers. In terms of interactions. For those of you that are new to our webinar, so video and audio is not possible. So the way to interact is through chat. You have a chat section that you can use to interact and to ask questions. So that's the way that we're going to do the interaction. And if you have questions, you can drop the questions whenever you have them, and I will raise the awareness to David that they are there so that he can address them. Now, allow me to introduce our speaker. So David is a very seasoned business analyst. So he has more than 20 years of experience across multiple sectors, across multiple industries. He's currently the lead business analyst at Computershare. He holds some certifications in Scrum and SAFe. He's a highly skilled software development and process improvement person. And he's an award-winning educator, and he's passionate about mentoring BAs. For your reference, you can find the link for David's LinkedIn profile and also to David's website in case you want to find out more about today's speaker and also connect with him. Without further ado, David, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, João, and hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening from wherever you may be joining us. Thank you for the very warm introduction and welcome. I'm just going to get this. And we can get started. All right. So before I get into the content that I wanted to share with you all, I just wanted to give a little bit more background on myself. As João mentioned, over 20 years of experience, which explains all the gray hair here at the front and along the sides of my head. And I didn't actually start as a business analyst. I started graduating from university with a French studies degree. So I thought I was going to pursue a bilingual career here in Canada because we have the 2 official languages, and that's the path I had thought I was going to take. And I began initially in the world of call center management and worked my way up from one of those folks that answers the call to hear your complaints at a company in the call center, all the way up through to a manager of said call centers. But I realized after 5 years that that wasn't a fit for me. That wasn't what I ultimately wanted to do with my career. I then, through a friend of a friend, joined a software development company as a startup. And we decided on a 3-month arrangement as a trainer. So that was the transferable skills I brought from my world of call center management to them, because they needed someone to train their end users on this software system that they were selling to eventual clients. That 3-month arrangement turned into 5 years and allowed me to be bitten by the BA bug, as they say, and eventually work through the entire project lifecycle in all capacities as a BA, being an on-site lead and so on, and the rest is history from there. And I share that background with you primarily to let you know that if any of you as new or aspiring BAs are feeling a bit anxious or concerned about whether this is the career path for me, is this something I can make an effective career out of, I can tell you wholeheartedly that the answer is yes, because you're looking at someone who started with a linguistics degree. and has since then never taken a single IT related course. Anything I've had to learn about the world of software development and IT has been learned on demand as needed through the various projects I've worked on, and added skills to the tool belt, so to speak, as we went along. So it absolutely does not matter from where you start. Linguistics degree, marketing, sales, call centers, it doesn't matter. If you have a willingness to learn, if you have a natural curiosity to yourself, if you are willing to, move past what stakeholders are initially telling you and really dig deep for what the underlying root causes or the underlying needs are, then you can have a successful career as a business analyst. So it really does not matter where you start from. So I hope that resonates with some, if not many of you, that you can absolutely start from anywhere and also look to apply the 4 habits that we're going to be talking about today. And as Jean mentioned, I'll just quickly reiterate, as you have any questions or thoughts or comments along the way, please drop them in the chat. He'll be monitoring it and then raise the hand to let me know that there's a question to be answered. And I'm happy to answer them along the way, as well as take any last questions, thoughts, or comments towards the end. So again, a little bit of a history on me, and I hope that resonates with you. So how did this all come to be? I reflected on my journey, given that I was approaching the 20-year mark at that time of my BA career, and just marveled at the number of lessons that I had learned along the way, right? And came to realize how dynamic our role is as business analysts. We need a blend of analytical skills. We need what I call interpersonal finesse, and we need an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. And so what that made me realize is that there are 4 pivotal lessons of all the lessons I've learned over these years that have really helped shape my career and continue to guide me even to this day through this ever-evolving business landscape that we work in this fun, magical place we call Project Land. And what you'll come to see as we go through these habits is that they are quite foundational. So beyond all the latest technologies that we deal with and all the methodologies that we deal with, these are more foundational habits that have really helped shape my career. And I'm reminded of them over and over and over again about how important they are. And when I don't follow these habits or don't practice these habits, it can come back to bite me from time to time. So the first one we're going to talk about here is about questioning and verifying. Some people refer to this as trust but verify. I prefer the expression question and verify, because for me, it has become clear that one of the cardinal rules in the world of business analysis is to always question and verify. It's very easy to get caught up in assumptions, which can often lead to misguided decisions on our part or on the project team's part. Early in my career, I learned that I needed to untangle the web of assumptions that can plague a project, where stakeholders are uncertain about this, or they're going to follow up because they're not sure they want to commit to that answer, and whatever the case may be. And we, as the business analyst, are the last project team member that should be assuming anything, right? Because the longer an assumption lingers in our work, especially within the requirements package that we are accountable for, and that gets invalidated perhaps later on in the project's life cycle, that can result in a lot of rework or sunk costs or whatever the case may be that is really unnecessary in some cases and could have been avoided had we been more diligent about validating or invalidating those assumptions. Because our stakeholders will be that way. They will tell us things that they believe to be the case and not always what they know to be the case or what their known needs are. And doing our work as BAs, as I'm sure many of you have noted, isn't just about eliciting the stakeholders' needs. It's about understanding the underlying rationale behind them, what those motivations are behind them, and challenge any preconceived notions they may have as they share them with us. I recall a project where stakeholders were convinced that a particular feature was essential for their success. And believe it or not, that feature was spell checker, right? Everyone loves a good spell check now and then, make sure our work is polished and refined and goes out with our best foot forward. But this stakeholder held it with such high regard that they were wanting to deem it priority 1 amongst all other features we were looking to implement. So we went through a series of probing questions, and we went through a meticulous verification process of what they were saying and what they meant. And it became evident after all that it was a perceived necessity based on outdated information, that the audit documentation that was part of the scope of what we had to deliver was going to be managed in the system, and therefore we had to make sure all I's were dotted, all T's were crossed, and so on and so forth. And that wasn't what the most recent scope layout was all about. So that stakeholder was just dealing with some outdated information, but we were told they were a key subject matter expert, and we had to take what they said as, the need and as the priority. But we just were hesitant about that. It didn't immediately resonate. The light bulb didn't immediately go off. And so we took the opportunity to question and verify in an iterative fashion until we eventually got to the truth. So what is the key takeaway for this particular habit? It's to approach every project with what I call a healthy dose of skepticism. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions and challenge the status quo. And when you do so, you're going to uncover not only hidden insights that you wouldn't have otherwise discovered, but you're also going to ensure that any recommendations that you will be asked to make over the course of the project's life cycle are going to be grounded in solid, verified information. The second habit I want to share with you rather, is the idea of being from Missouri. As some of you, if not all of you, may know, in the United States of America, each state has its own moniker, has its own nickname, if you will. You have California as the Golden State, you have Florida as the Sunshine State, New York as the Empire State. Missouri is actually known as the Show Me State. And that is a crucial mindset that we need to embody as business analysts as we go about doing our analysis work. Because if you think about it, given the world we live in that is inundated with so much data and information, it becomes very easy to be swayed by impressive presentations of information and persuasive arguments. But two, the stakeholders are not always going to be clear about their needs, nor describing their pain points. But seasoned analysts understand the value of demanding what I call tangible proof, right? Let me understand what that report looks like. Can you show me an example of the last time you ran this report, or show me how these calculations work on the interface, and so on and so forth, so that we actually get to see that proof, because sometimes they just will not be clear in explaining that to you verbally. This lesson really hit home for me during a project where my fellow project team members and I anticipated that our shortlisted vendors that we were looking to buy a software product from were not going to show us exactly what we needed to see from their software solutions. So what we did is we adopted the show me the proof mentality. And instead of relying on the vendor's assurances in the way they wanted to present their software solutions, we insisted that each vendor follow the same demo script to validate their claims of what their software could do for us and our organization's needs. And that demo script not only revealed potential pitfalls that were conveniently omitted in the earlier sales pitches they gave to us, but it also allowed for necessary adjustments before we went into a full-scale implementation, saving us a lot of heartache and grief along the way. So what that experience taught me is the idea and the importance of being discerning. Even when faced with seemingly convincing propositions, we should ask for proof as and when we can to make sure that we are operating with as much evidence-based decision-making as we possibly can, going through to ultimately deliver these projects to fruition. The third habit I want to share with you, again, very foundational in its nature, I'll speak to it as comparing it to real estate. What are the three most important things in real estate? Location, location, and location. But if there's one lesson that's become ingrained in my daily routine, it's the importance of documenting, documenting, and documenting some more. We are in such a fast-paced world of business, so many details can easily slip through the cracks, if not captured and cataloged appropriately. By writing things down, and always writing things down, is going to free your mind to do what you do best, which is to analyze, instead of trying to remember every last detail we come into contact with. So whether those details come in through meeting minutes, whether they come in through eventual requirements in our requirements packages or project timelines. Meticulous documentation is going to serve as our blueprint as BAs. There are projects where seemingly insignificant details from earlier discussions can end up being game changers in the final implementation phase. And without that thorough documentation, that critical piece of information might as well have been lost in the shuffle. So what does documenting do for us? What's the value? It gives us not only clarity of communication, but it serves as a historical record, right? A key stakeholder made a certain decision. Let's log that decision, the rationale behind that decision, and make sure that all the relevant parties understand this decision before we move forward, so that not if, but when those questions come up later on, why did we go this way? Why did we choose this solution or whatnot? We have that decision log to go back to understand and refresh on that, and or maybe come back and say, let's challenge that decision because a lot of factors in the environment have changed, for example, and let's revisit that decision. But without that, we have no basis, no starting line, no baseline from which to evolve our project's delivery and conversations. It'll enable teams to track the evolution of a project, learn from past experiences, and ultimately and hopefully avoid repeating mistakes. I've learned as a seasoned BA that a well-documented project is a resilient project. Lastly, the final habit I want to share with you is the concept of never stopping to learn. In this realm of business analysis, stagnation is going to be a recipe for obsolescence. Not only is the technological landscape regularly changing, as well as business practices, but so are market dynamics, as we've all come to see. By embracing the practice of never stop learning, I've made it a cornerstone of my professional journey. Because not only will technologies change, not only will trends in industry change, but so will methodologies, right? AKA the onset, the genesis of Agile as a framework. But by having a commitment to continuous learning, rather, it's helped keep me relevant. It's helped me generate new ideas as I've had to do that with relevant parties in projects. But ultimately, it's allowed me to converse better with the latest and greatest information available to us out there in the world of business. And all of that has opened doors to new opportunities and challenges that I could not have anticipated beforehand. So keep that in mind, folks. We never, never, never should stop learning, whether it's through webinars, through the Ireland chapter, whether it's through paid courses, whether it's through unpaid courses, whether it's through other webinars that other organizations offer. We need to keep staying on top of in a changing landscape, both technologically, in methodologies, business practices, market dynamics, whatever the case may be. And we all know that we are in the digital transformation era at this point in the world. And that has ushered in new tools and techniques that were unimaginable a decade ago, hence, example, AI. We need to stay ahead of the curve because it's not just a luxury to do so, it's a necessity for us to do so. This is not a profession where we can simply go by and coast on 20-year-old information and practices and expect to have an effective career. We need to keep up with the times as they change. So whether you attend workshops, whether you pursue certifications, whether you're engaging with industry communities like you're doing here through the Ireland chapter, those are all avenues that I myself have consistently explored to fuel that appetite for learning. And that's part of what we need to have, is that willingness, that curiosity to converse better, to be more and more in relevant conversations that will help move things forward and get you involved in bigger and better opportunities as your career evolves. So ultimately, what have the last 20 years taught me? That no two projects are identical, and that each project is its own canvas. And the lessons learned from prior projects are the brushstrokes that are going to shape that final masterpiece that is the current project you're working on. So by questioning assumptions, advocating for proof, meticulous documentation, a relentless pursuit of knowledge, all have formed the bedrock of success in this dynamic field and will do so for you as well. So find ways to weave these lessons into your everyday activities. because we will not only navigate the complexities of business analysis by doing so, but also contribute to the growth and the resilience of the organizations that we serve as business analysts. So that is my musing. That is what I was recently reflecting on over my career. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to share that with all of you. I'm happy to take any and all questions you might have on this or any other BA topic that you'd like to talk about. Xiao, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for sharing. Yes, there are some questions in the chat.
Okay.
The first one is from Pavel. He's asking, "Hey, David, would you advise how it?" Sorry, let me reread. Do you have advice for someone who is over 45 years old and an accountant and wants to start a career as a BA? Do you have any tips?
They would be the same tips as someone who is earlier on in their career and in any field for that matter, and that is to start applying these habits. It is about learning as much as you possibly can and finding each and every opportunity you can to gain project experience, because regardless of all the academic knowledge you acquire, so to speak, and the soft skills that you may possess, employers are going to value work experience over everything. We all know this. And if you're finding it difficult to crack into the world of business analysis, through the actual direct position, see if there's opportunity to do any kind of project work at the Ireland chapter or any other chapter local to you, and see if you can help plan any of the events. Those are projects that need to be delivered in order to advance the chapter's goals. And when you do so, you get an opportunity to add those projects to your resume and show that you have that work experience. A lot of people also miss out on nonprofit organizations because we're all looking for employment with for-profit enterprises. But there are nonprofit organizations that exist and have goals and outcomes they're trying to achieve. They're just not doing it for a larger and larger profit. They certainly need to keep reserves, but they're not doing it beyond that. But they still hire people. And on top of that, they also look for volunteers. So if you can find a nonprofit organization that you are willing to support and offer your time and services to doing that, they have projects to make changes to their organizational practices just as much as the Royal Bank of Scotland has to, or whatever the case may be. So that is just as legitimate project experience as working for a for-profit enterprise under a full-time employment arrangement. So find those opportunities to gain project experience and add that to your belt, so to speak, thereby adding it to your CV, which will then make you much more of a stronger candidate as you go out to look for the roles that you do. Bit of a long-winded response, but I hope that made sense, Pavel.
It's good. It's good. And if I may, thanks, David. If I may, some of the other questions that are here are somewhat related. So the next one is from Oleg. Sorry, Oleg. I know your name is a little bit longer, but I'm afraid of murdering your name. So the next question from Oleg. So which typical BA interview questions or tasks during an interview process can you share, or can you advise on? Is there any? This is a very open question. The second part is, are there any workshops or on-demand practical workshops you could recommend? Or the last part is the BA community. So I recommend IIBA Ireland chapter on the BA community. But
of course,
BA interview questions, David, and practical workshops, or so it looks like people are looking to try and get a set of skills before they start, trying to get ahead of the curve.
no, absolutely. So to the point on interview questions are going to be exactly, well, like they're going to be behavioral in nature, because any employer is going to want to see that work you've done in the past and how you went about handling that work is the way you're going to do it in the future. That's the belief that every employer has, that the way you behaved in the past is the way you're going to behave for them and in the future. So they're going to want to understand how you handle difficult situations with stakeholders, where you had, a conflict between two stakeholders, for example, and you had to resolve that conflict, or how it was, working on a certain project where there was a lot of complexity or what have you. So I wouldn't focus so much on exactly what the questions are directly and specifically, but more knowing your work experience. When you submit a CV forward to an employer, pardon me, I'm still recovering from the flu. When you submit your CV to an employer, anything on that CV is fair game for a question from that employer. So my approach going into it is knowing my CV inside and out and being able to describe and speak to all those bullet points that I have about my duties and responsibilities and things that I accomplished under each and every job, under each and every company that I worked at. And if you are able to do that and know that inside and out, then to me, it doesn't really matter what the question is, whatever the behavioral question is going to be, you'll be able to answer it because you're going to draw from one or multiple experiences over your career to be able to answer that question. So I would take a different approach and not so focused on this is the question they're going to ask me and let me, write such a precise response to it, because that's more of a memorization approach. I'm saying comprehend, know your experience inside and out, be able to describe incidents, issues, accomplishments from anywhere in your work experience, have that at the ready in your own words, and then you'll be able to answer any and all behavioral questions that come your way in interviews. Secondly, in terms of workshops and what have you, I'll be honest, I'm going to favor some of the courses that I teach, because I think, they are well structured and cover a lot of good ground there. But you really need to find a place that, is reputable and credible and has people with a lot of long-standing experience in the field of business analysis, is what I would consider there. I don't know if Zhao has any recommendations for anything more local to Ireland. I'm not sure, Oleg, where you're situated, but if you're open to something more remote, or what have you, the courses that I teach at the University of Toronto through the School of Continuing Studies have been, there for years. We've updated them to the latest and greatest content, and been fortunate enough to receive a lot of positive feedback on them. So something you might want to check out there, or something along the lines with a similar credible institution.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through the questions.
By all means.
The next one is somewhat related. Well, if you just a quick note, David, if you feel like some of these questions are more or less related, or if you feel like you're repeating the answer, by all means, let me know, and I'm happy to skip. Then the next question, also from Oleg. If you were involved in hiring BAs, would you look in for a candidate? And giving the background that Oleg mentioned, I'm assuming for a junior BA position.
Right. As it turns out, I am a BA hiring manager and have been in the past as well. And so what I particularly look for is a blend of capabilities. We look for the technical skills, right? Have you demonstrated experience, or can you demonstrate experience using many of the techniques that are commonly used by BAs to do their analysis work? Things like about user stories, acceptance criteria, give us examples, give us some context of a situation when you had to do that, as one point. But I also focus on soft skills, and I want to understand how you would handle certain situations in our work environment, and then ask you to indicate what soft skills would you use or have you used in the past to handle either a difficult situation or a complex situation or a frustrating situation, and go from there. So to me, it's a blend. There's sort of two sides of the coin that is a BA: the hard technical skills and the soft skills or core competencies, as they're referred to in different places, and understand that as a mix and as a blend. Right? That is really what I'm looking for as a hiring manager, someone who has a really effective blend of those capabilities to come in and be part of our team.
Thanks, David. The next one is from Pavel. Another question from Pavel. If So BA work is only about software. Oh, and if, sorry, BA work is only about software. Can the BA can the BA improve existing business processes? So I think I can answer this. Um, so Pavel, BAs can work in a very broad um, in industries in different sectors. Yes, nowadays because a lot of the work relies on technology, information technology. Of course, a lot of the work, a lot of the BA work will also rely on that area. So yes, there is BAs are involved in software development. Sorry, on helping developing software or business solutions that include a lot of times software, but BAs do much more than that. So you can be a BA without being involved in software. There's some industries you can be on projects where there's no software involved. So yeah, so the core, the going back a little bit to the roots, the goal of the BA is to, of course, to facilitate and to help deliver a solution. And usually BAs have the ability or as a function to look at processes and create processes, map processes, improve processes. That would be the first step, and then how can the process be changed or removed? So a lot of times, because of our society these days relates to software, but it doesn't have to be specifically related to software. It's about, at the end of the day, it's about processes. Of course, now 90% of the processes rely, or at least part of them rely on a technical solution. So software shows, but you can have processes without any any software. For example, if your client is a wood mill, I'm sure you can find processes that can be improved that have nothing to do with software, or even construction. A BA can work for a construction company, for example, and help improve the 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 processes. Sorry, David, I didn't want to steal your spotlight, but
No, no, no. If
I
it's all
think I
right,
could.
I'd just like to add a little bit to that because I think
Please
you
do.
said a lot of great points there. One, the first thing I'd say is let's remember what a solution is, because that's a word that gets bandied about a lot in project land. You know, you have this solution, we're going to implement that solution, but what exactly does it mean? A solution is the complete set of changes that a project team is going to implement into the business's operations in order to address the goals and objectives of that project. So that can include software, new and enhanced, business processes, new and enhanced, new facilities, new equipment, new policies, new business rules. Any combination or multiple thereof can form part of the solution for that particular project. And as business analysts, we need to have what's called 360-degree thinking or systems thinking in mind, which is to say, have we accounted for all those different components that are going to be impacted and need to be implemented and delivered by this project team? Also, remember that every business, whether it's for profit, nonprofit, or what have you, is a collection of processes. That is how these companies run. You come in, you do something, you hand it off to somebody else. Someone else does a piece of work, they send it to you to do your part, and then you submit it to someone else, whatever. Those are all processes. And I absolutely understand that some days it feels like nothing's working and that it's just chaos. The processes are there, they're just not being followed, or they're outdated and need to be updated. But all in all, that's how businesses work, is through these processes running and being executed over and over and over again over the course of time. So what does that mean? That yes, we do have software systems, but they're tools used in one or many business processes. So if a tool is going to change, it's quite possible that the process that's using it as a tool is also going to need to change to adapt to the new tool if it's a significant tool change. Or even if not, there might be some procedural change within the process that needs to change and therefore forms part of the project's solution and the scope of that solution. So it's always important for us to keep that in mind and know that that should play a part in every project that we're doing and undergoing analysis, right? So that's always going to be there. Last point I'll make on that, I have known a handful of BAs over the years who work under the title of process analyst, which means all day, every day, all they do is work with various departments and business organizations and help those process owners and other stakeholders streamline and optimize their business processes without touching or changing any information technology related to them. So you absolutely can do a career just in that. And we also have to remember that it should play a part in every project that we work on. So once again, a bit of a long-winded answer or add-on to Zhao's point, but hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you so much, David. If you don't mind, I'll keep reading through the questions.
Please, as many as you have.
Thank you. So the next two questions are related to AI, so I think I can merge them into one. Let me just run this through ChatGPT. No, I'm kidding. So how to stay updated in terms of AI? What are the current trends in the industry? And do you think that AI will change the way you work?
AI is going to change the way you work, but it's not going to take over your work. So that is nothing to fear for us as business analysts because it doesn't, and maybe someday when robots do take over the future, they will have the ability to be human and understand the human condition and human context, but for the foreseeable future, they won't. And so we will always be there and needed to do that work that brings it home at least, and then helps take the outputs we get from generative AI, for example, and apply that in the appropriate context to the appropriate level of details and specifics that our project needs at that point in time. Regardless of which AI tool you're going to use, what has become clear to me at least is that the expression garbage in, garbage out has never been truer. I'm not sure if anyone's not heard of that expression before, but the idea is if you do a piece of work and you do it very poorly, then you can only expect a poor output or a poor outcome from such work. So that applies very much to AI as well, and applies specifically to the prompts that we put into tools like Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on to get the output we're looking for. So the skill that will always be very valuable in the world of AI is what's more formally known as prompt engineering. How effectively can you craft those prompts so that when you put it in and maybe refine it a few times, but ultimately either once or after a few attempts, you get the output you're looking for to the desired quality of output, that is really going to be your key to success. So there's many a tutorial, many a YouTube video out there on all the different components of a well-crafted prompt, an effective prompt, learning what those are, applying those examples to your own real-world experience and practicing that over and over again is what's going to make you more effective, but also more efficient as you go about using Gen AI tools in the future.
Thanks, David. The next question is from some person I'm dreading saying the name, Yeshwant. Sorry. So and basically it's around how do you deal with difficult stakeholders? How to manage the how to manage the stakeholders? How to say no to a stakeholder and deal with difficult stakeholders?
So it really comes down to what I call killing them with kindness, right? It's about approaching it very neutrally, very maturely, and understanding the underlying rationale behind the difficulty you're experiencing. Because I assure you, that difficulty is a symptom of something deeper. So understand what the nature of the issue is. What's the root cause? Really try to get to the core of what is going on, what's troubling them, and once you know and understand that and affirm that with them, then you know exactly what you need to tackle that will address it and therefore deal with the superficial symptoms that you're experiencing in terms of frustrating behavior, difficult interactions, etc. So it's really about understanding what's going on. And that again goes to the willingness to learn, the natural curiosity to dig into something and not simply take what they're presenting to you, which can often be superficial symptoms and statements, and really look to analyze, break it down, and understand it at its core so that you can really address the problem or take advantage of the opportunity that they're experiencing. That would be my advice there.
Thank you. Thank you, David. The next one is from James. So with a shift to a product-based model, how can BAs adapt their skills, techniques, and mindset to thrive in the likes of product management and product owner, if I may add?
Right. So for me, the work really doesn't change between that type of product-based structure in more of an agile framework than it does in a waterfall. What we do doesn't change. How and when we do it is what's different and what changes. So the same sort of critical thinking, analytical thinking that we apply in more traditional project approach organization. We're just applying it in different ways, user stories and acceptance criteria and the like, versus more traditional statements. But the visual models that have been promoted through the BA practice for many years now, and that I promoted as well, apply just the same no matter what the project approach is, and whether you're taking a more product-oriented approach or not. The value of a data model, the value of a decision table is equally valuable no matter what the project approach is. It will substantiate what the ultimate need is that you've represented in one or many requirements related to that need or to that feature. So it's really more a difference of how and when versus what we do. What we do doesn't fundamentally change.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much. Let me scroll down just a moment, please. Yes, the next one is from Ken. Do you have any go-to questions when you're eliciting requirements?
Not necessarily, Ken, because as I mentioned it through my presentation, no two projects are identical. They may be slightly, moderately, or significantly similar, but they're never going to be an identical match. So there is no one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter recipe that we simply take from project to project and ask the same questions to start or iterate on at each and every single time. Pardon me. And so what do I mean by context? The circumstances, the conditions, the constraints, excuse me, under which this project is going to be delivered will be slightly, moderately, or significantly different than the next project you're going to start next week, than the one you worked on 2 months ago, than the one you're going to work on 2 years from now. So you need to look at each project in its own context, and based on the level of starting information that you have, right? You're going to start at different points. It's not all the same starting line with all questions relating to all components or all features in this project. You'll have different starting lines, different starting points, which will be its context, and therefore you'll be starting from different points and know more about this feature than about that one. And as a result, get into the more secondary and tertiary level questions on this one, whereas the more basic one, you're going to have to start more foundationally and understand what it is, how it's used, and all those traditional, fundamental, basic questions we ask to get the party started, so to speak, and understand initially what it is they need at a high level, at a business capability level. So there is no one size fits all here. We've got to work within that context. And that's part of our value proposition as business analysts, is we come in and we understand and learn the context of that project. We learn, we build up what's called working knowledge of the business domain, so we can communicate the concepts and terminology within that domain and use all that as a way to get started and ultimately deliver.
Thanks, David. There was a small piece, a second piece to that question where
Sure, sure.
Ken was just mentioning that. Ken was just sharing that one of the questions that he also always has ready is, at the end of this project, what does success look like to you? And if I may add, Ken, from my personal experience, I think one of the biggest goals of the BAs is to make sure that the business or the sponsor, they get what they need and not what they want or what they think they want, because a lot of times what they need and what they want, it's not the same thing.
Fair point. Fair point.
Thanks, David. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand if the next
No,
comment is
go for it.
a question or just a comment. No, I think it's just James sharing his experience. We have another question from Rahul. So how do you handle a situation where you have introduced a new system to a team, but the stakeholders are comfortable using the old system as it caters to their individual needs? So change to resistance to change.
A similar response to this question as it was to the earlier one about difficult stakeholders. Understand the root cause. Understand the deeper why they're resistant to this change. What do they feel like they're potentially going to lose? Not what they're actually going to lose, but what do they feel they're potentially going to lose? And really understand it. And then when you see that that isn't exactly what they're going to lose, and in fact, there's going to be a net gain of benefit or capability, then share that with them, demonstrate that with them, have the conversation to walk them through and get them to understand. And you'll find more often than not that resistance will dwindle and will go away. Because often that times that resistance is because of an unknown. People fear the unknown. They don't yet have that new system in place. They know the old system like the back of their hand, but the new system is new. Therefore, it's change. And a lot of people can be uncomfortable with change, hence the resistance. But if we help them understand what that's going to be like and are there and show support, and again, kill them with kindness as you provide that support, then more often than not, that resistance goes away and they become, I wouldn't say they become champions of the change, but they certainly are more on board and willing to adapt to the new practices.
Thanks, David. We have another question from Vashim, but I think you already answered this. Again, it's so this is someone that is pursuing an MBA in business as a business analyst or in business analysis, and asking suggestions. How can they make how can they start a career as a BA, and also about AI. But I think you already answered these two questions, right, David? There's nothing much to add here.
Well, in terms of the MBA, if I heard you correctly, Zhao, they're
Yes.
pursuing an MBA. I would say certainly finish that MBA, right? Because that's quite an accomplishment to have on the belt, so to speak. But other than that, yeah, my advice would be the same as it was earlier. Find and gain project experience as much as you can, and don't necessarily, look for roles with the exact title of BA because it is a title. It doesn't mean that if you don't have that title, you're not doing business analysis work. That couldn't be further from the truth. So find every opportunity to gain project experience and find other roles. Another piece of advice I would add, Joe, at this point is as you're doing your search, folks, don't just look for business and analyst in the job title. Look for junior in the title. Look for intern in the title. I've even seen in the last number of years co-ops being offered by companies, right, to bring on very new, very junior folks. And yes, you're starting at a lower compensation point, but there's a trade-off they're willing to do. They're willing to bring in someone with less experience than they'd ultimately like and willing to train you into their practices and so on, but you'd be coming in at a lower compensation point, right? If you're really keen on getting into this profession, and again, you have the resources to be able to work at that lower compensation level, then by all means, jump at that chance and get in there. I also encourage people to consider software tester roles. Because if you think about it, that is an activity that a BA can get involved in over the course of a project's life cycle, right? We either roll up our sleeves and help with the direct testing, or we oversee those that are doing the testing to make sure it's going to be demonstrating the outcomes that the project sponsor wanted ultimately or needed out of this project. So we're involved in testing in some way, shape, or form. So why not do software testing work for a couple of years? Gain that project experience, again, not directly as a BA doing BA work, but as a tester, you're participating in status meetings, getting the updates, seeing the dynamics and flow of project work, and then have that on your resume after a couple of years and build on that, perhaps into an eventual BA role. So different ways to go about doing it. I find a lot of people just focus on business and analyst in their job searches and don't widen the net to include other like roles, right? Or roles where BAs can get involved in.
Thanks, David. David, I have two more. Is that okay?
By all means.
Thank you. The next one from James. How do you evaluate whether a project's outcome truly delivered the intended business value? Is there an example you can share?
Let me think back into the archives here. It really comes out to initially about knowing exactly what it is they need and not so much what they superficially want, and having that all laid out as early as possible in the project's life cycle so that we have a target to work towards, and therefore we will know what success looks like and whether we've realized the benefits or not. So whether it's in a project charter, a workstream charter, a project scope document, something to that effect, maybe a product vision in the context of a product-oriented environment, and understand exactly what it is they're looking for, right? What is that vision? What is that mandate? What are those goals? What are the metrics that they're looking to see improved, right? Anything and everything is to quantifiably measure themselves thereafter. Understand what that is, understand what the current levels are, what's the future target, and then we have something to work towards. I use the analogy of a bullseye, right? The dart board. If we're just operating without that information, we're just trying to hit anywhere on the bullseye, but it may not be exactly what the stakeholders need. But if we work initially to set expectations and clarity, we're focusing more on the center of the dartboard, the bullseye. And when we know exactly what the bullseye is, then we'll know once we've delivered whether we've hit that bullseye or we didn't meet expectations. So it really has a lot to do with those expectations and how clear, accurate, and complete you are with setting them in the first place as a project team, and then managing them as you go through the ups and downs of project delivery.
Thank you. Thank you, David. So one more from another person. So failure can be one of the greatest teachers. Is there is there an experience you can share where you faced failure as a BA and how you overcome it? Maybe not failure, or maybe it didn't meet expectations. Also reflecting on your first BA experience compared to now after 20 years in the field, how have your approach and mindset evolved? So two in one. So how to deal with failure and how has your mindset changed?
So in terms of how to deal with failure, it's to recognize that it is not the end of the world. That yes, you may have failed, you may not have met expectations on that project, the team didn't successfully deliver the project, but it's not the end of the world. What went wrong? What could have been done better? What, in fact, did we do well? And keep those as strengths going forward to in future project work. But what didn't we do well? Where were there opportunities for improvement? And go from there. Particularly with our own work, was it the quality of our requirements? Did we not pass information along, perhaps at a certain point when we should have? Things of that nature. So that's how I would go about dealing with project failure. I'm trying to think back. I'm not saying by any means that I'm perfect at all, but I'm just trying to think of the last sort of failure situation we were in. Um, it really just it came down to not understanding the stakeholders' needs well enough, and us having a belief, a perceived notion of what they were looking for, and applying more of what we as the project team thought the business needed and how things should work, as opposed to really understanding their needs. And when we ultimately delivered, it didn't meet the mark. We didn't pass user acceptance testing, and as we know, that's one of the final phases in a more traditional project approach, and that resulted in us having to do a fair bit of rework that none of us were happy about doing. Didn't make the client very happy, and in that case, it was one of the places where I worked as a consultant. So we were delivering this for a client, and we unfortunately had to eat some of the additional costs. We weren't able to bill those additional costs because it was our fault for not having been as diligent as we could have been with our analysis and with our project delivery. Um, Forgive me, Joe, remind me of the second part of that question.
Uh, how has your mindset evolved over the last 20 years?
It's really been just to practice these habits over and over and over again, and do so as diligently as I possibly can. And that's why I've sort of highlighted them as my four cornerstone habits of my professional journey, because they are that. They are exactly that, right? Regularly question and verify. When I haven't, assumptions have carried on, they've leaked through, and we get burned, and there's additional work, or something didn't get delivered to the right specification. If I didn't document things as thoroughly as I could have, things get lost in the shuffle, didn't include them in my requirements package, and that detail got missed and may have got found out later on, and it turned out that I missed including it, and I should have, and so on and so forth. So really just as diligently as you possibly can. Practice these habits and really weave them into your everyday activities is the best advice I could give you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, just reading through.
Take your time, no problem.
Um, So your opinion on the importance of a Scrum certification for a junior BA with lack of practice, and ratio Scrum versus non-Scrum projects in the industry. So basically, someone that's not in the it's not a BA right now.
Yes.
They're trying to leverage it through certification. So they're asking about the importance of a Scrum certification.
So, as I said earlier, it's going to beat work experience. But I've also said as well, never stop learning. And that learning can be through pursuing certifications. But I wouldn't say that they're absolutely necessary, but they will always help you. They will never hurt you. So if you have the time and the resources to be able to pursue a certification, an agile-based one or an IABA certification, it will always help. It will always benefit you, right? But at this point, it's unlike our colleagues in the project management, where if you try to obtain a PM role, you must have the project management professional certification, or otherwise you won't be considered. Because that profession is so long term and has been around and so well established that that has become such a baseline that employers won't consider it without that certification. We are not there yet in the world of business analysis. I think we will eventually get there, but right now we're not. So certifications are not always required for the role, but they will never hurt you. They will always help you. And if you want to take them earlier on, then by all means, go ahead and do so. We all know the IIBA has the ECBA, the Entry Certificate in Business Analysis certification, which is the first level, which is grounded solely in academic knowledge with no work experience required. That could be something to pursue to, again, bolster your knowledge and never stop learning. But I wouldn't say they're absolutely necessary at this point in time. And though from an agile perspective, I'll share again my personal example. The certified Scrum product owner designation that I have, I only obtained in December of 2023. So after all these years and all this gray hair accumulating, I still decided to pursue it because I thought it would be valuable to me to really understand what my product owners for whom I work on these squads are going through, thinking about, what are they most concerned about. And by understanding that through that certification workshop, I had a better appreciation for what my current product owner was going through, and therefore I could be more effective in my role supporting him as the BA on the squad and doing the work I needed to do and understand why he was asking for this or that at other times. So I didn't do it so much for the letters after my name as I did it more to better understand how I can do my role more effectively. And again, that was at that point after 18 years in the role and still decided to pursue it. So never ever stop learning.
Thank you, David. Last question, if I may. For a BA that's for someone that's been a BA for 10 years, in your opinion, what would be the career path for someone in that position? I'm assuming being a BA is one, becoming a project manager, usually it's a natural step. But for you, you've been a BA for 20 years, so you're probably a little bit biased to answer this question. But in 2025, and from what you've seen from your colleagues and all, what are the options from someone that's at this stage of their journey?
They are multiple, Joe. There are so many options because think about the kind of skills we have and we need as BAs in order to do our work. They're universal. There's all the soft skills that we need to have, all those competencies like meeting management, interpersonal skills, conflict resolution. Those are universal skill sets. And on top of that, the kind of analytical and logical and critical thinking we have to do to delve deep into what the stakeholders need and turn those into a set of functional and non-functional requirements in a traditional format or in a set of user stories with acceptance criteria under an agile-based approach, that type of ability is universal and can be used in so many different directions. You could take the product management path and work your way through to a product manager role. You could go through a more AI specialist role and learn to do machine learning and become an AI practitioner that way. You could take the project management route, as you said. You could work more on the marketing side of an organization. You can work more on the operation side. We have such a universal skill set that we could take forward that the world really can be your oyster if you demonstrate those skills being applied over and over again, project after project, and you decide then you want to branch off in a certain direction. You have a great candidacy to take forward with you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's it. And we just hit the 1 hour mark. I think that's it
Wonderful.
in terms of questions. David, once again, I would like to thank you so much for coming and doing this session for our for our chapter, for our community, where we are very much appreciative of you. And
My
also
pleasure.
thank you. I will also like to thank everyone for attending today. Gentle reminder that David was kind enough to allow us to record this session. So this session will be in our chapter's YouTube channel, like all the other events that we were able to record. And once again, guys, I would like to thank you for coming, and thanks, David, for this wonderful session.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Happy to do it and happy to stay in touch. And is James still on the line?
Sorry, yeah, I think you broke up a little bit. You mean James,
Oh,
David?
James. Is James still on the line?
Yes, 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 yes. He's here. He's here.
Can he join us on video? I'd like to say hello. Him and I have been corresponding a little bit from time to time, but we haven't had a chance
Excellent.
to
That's a
meet
good
there.
question. That's a good question. I don't know if I can do it.
If
One
not, I'll
second.
happily catch up with him at another point. But I just wanted to say hello and
One
thank him
second.
for the opportunity
I can. I can.
to do this, and to yourself, Zhao, for doing all the excellent logistics and coordination to get us to this point.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been doing this for better or worse. I've been doing this for a while. I think James will be able to share his video if you bear with me, David, and everyone. Oh, there
There
he
he
is.
Hey,
is.
hey
Hello,
guys.
James.
Hey David, how are you?
Good. Nice to meet you, albeit virtually, and thank you
Yeah,
for initially agreeing to exploring this opportunity. I appreciate it. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
no problem at all. Thanks so much for the amazing presentation. It's going to be really valuable for the BA community, not only the Irish community, but those 4 habits I could resonate a lot when you're going through your presentation. So thanks so much for taking the time to speak and to share your knowledge based off your experience.
My pleasure. Nice to meet all of you, albeit virtually. Go forward and BA prosper, and I hope our paths cross again.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Bye,
Take care,
guys.
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone. Have a great
Bye
week.
now.
Thanks, David, once again. Thank you.
Cheers.